Oh, actually, your audio is not working. There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Yep, I can hear you.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So we are now on the same coast together. I just recently moved to Washington State.
Okay.
Yeah, so just little north neighbors.
Yeah, you've got much better weather right now. It's very hot here.
Yeah, I was hearing today that it was like a surprising scorcher.
Not so surprised. I mean, we've been in the 90s for quite a long time. In case anybody who's listening doesn't know, I'm in California. I'm in Silicon Valley. So yeah, it's been in the 90s here for quite a long time. Luckily, the air quality is a little bit better these last few kind of 2 weeks maybe. We've had better air quality with the fires and stuff. We got a tiny bit of rain on Sunday, like in the middle of the night, which helped us a lot. So, but yeah. But up in Washington, it must be beautiful up there.
Yeah, it's just a little gray today, as per usual. Well, Jen, let's take a little step back. Thank you so much for telling us that you are, getting a little spoiler based out of Silicon Valley. But I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started writing.
I started writing. Oh, wow. Well, I've lived in California my whole life, number one. Mm-hmm. How did I end up writing cowboys? When I was young, even though I live in Silicon Valley, I live very close to, it's like 2 hours to the mountains. It's an hour to the beach where I am. And then all around me is ranch land, as well as, we produce a ton of produce here in the Central Valley as well. And so, growing up here, when we would go for a ride or, we'd go to the lake or whatever, you had to pass all the orchards and everything and go through all of the ranches and see all the horses and cattle and stuff. And I had a best friend in grade school, and we were in Girl Scouts together. And part of Girl Scouts was earning our badge and riding horses. And I'm learning about ranching because cool. Her mother, the leader of the group, that they had a ranch in a nearby town. And so on weekends and stuff, I would get to go out there and spend the night with her. And that was like the greatest gift, because it was like, let's go horseback riding in the morning, and let's go, like, her uncles would be like, see those cows over there? Go get them. We would be like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Were you fearless on a horse, or were you like timid when you first started?
No, I fell in love the second I saw a horse and was just like, I want one. How do I fit it in the backyard? But I was, like I said, lucky enough to have a friend who had the ranch and who invited me over all the time. And I'd love to spend weekends with her. I grew up in a very tumultuous household. And so for me, that was an escape to get to go to somebody's house, especially hers, and like go ride and be out in the open and just be, in the quiet and the peace of it. With my best friend as well. So yeah, that's how I came to loving cowboys. But actually writing them, I was, of course, as a romance writer, you're always like, I read romance like crazy, which I did. Linda Lael Miller was one of my all-time favorite authors. I just loved all of her stories. I love that she wrote books in the past about the Old West type of cowboy and then the modern day kind of cowboy. And so I was always drawn to that. And then when I started writing, the first book I wrote was called Saved by the Rancher. And it was a city girl who's saved by a rancher. And so it just kind of fit my two little worlds, that I love this one part of the world, but I live in California, so it's not really my world. Yeah. And that's kind of how it started. Although that particular book, The Rancher, was in Colorado. But then when I started really writing cowboys, starting with the Montana Men, I had written the book set in California, and my publisher was like, we love that there are cowboys in California, but the general population is going to go, really? Really?
Yeah, which is so surprising.
Like, could we set it someplace else in the West that you know about, that you love, that would be a little bit more easy for people to just kind of imagine that? And I was like, sure, I love Montana. Let's, we'll go to Montana. And so that's kind of how it started with writing all the cowboys and stuff. So,
Well, I love it. Well, and it's so obviously because you are a horse lover and you did have that opportunity to be around ranches growing up, but like, what made you love Montana and be so open to like picking that instead of Wyoming or Colorado or even Texas?
I don't know. I think it was just like, At first it was just the idea of Montana, those
Mm-hmm.
giant, wide open spaces of those valleys. You've got these mountains, but then there's like these just breathtaking valleys that are just, you know, all ranches, and it's just for miles, all this green pasture land. And I was always just so struck by that, because in California, it's not like that here. You have the valleys and the mountains, but it's like, it's just nothing like Montana. And so that just really struck me. And my husband and I have traveled there, and we basically, you know, went to Missoula, and basically every single day would be like, let's go north. And that we'd spend the whole day just traveling around. Then, you know, the next day, if we didn't finish north, we'd, you know, let's go west and just like spread out across the state. And we just spent time. We love driving. We love stopping at, you know, off the wall places. Like, what is that random thing over there? Let's go find out. And Montana is kind of great like that, because they have a lot of places to go. And we love hiking. One of my favorite places that we went to was in Montana. There's a Lake Como, that you and we went there, and it just happened to be like the start of hunting season, so it's like all we heard were gunshots going off. And
so romantic.
Like, maybe shouldn't go hiking right now, but we did. We figured we were safe at the lake. That hunting was farther away because the lake was open and the hiking was open. But yeah, and we just hiked it. It was beautiful. We finally, like after like a mile and a half, we found this beautiful waterfall filling into the lake, and it was just like, it was so kind of like, how do they have this great stuff, these rivers and these waterfalls and these lakes and these places to go fishing? And I was like, this is just the life, you know, that it would be so great to live up here. But of course, my husband's an engineer, so, you know, we live in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. It's like, this is lovely. It's the exact opposite of what we have.
Yeah. But I just loved it up there, and just fell in love with the place, and the people were so nice, and it was just such a great place to explore. So I've kind of hung out in writing world in Montana for quite some time, but I do have a new series coming out next year that is set in Wyoming.
Oh, wow. Exotic Wyoming.
We need to expand our little horizons here.
Yeah. Well, and being so open to that, like that sort of openness of travel and just kind of picking a direction and going when you're just exploring a new state, like it opens you up to the opportunity of seeing like the small towns too, which is such the heart of your books.
That, and Montana is so much like that. When you do venture out and travel, I mean, it's not, it's sparsely populated when you get outside of like a Missoula or Billings or, you know, Bozeman. It's very sparsely populated. And it was, you know, you find quirky things, like almost every town along the route had a Subway. And we were like, boy, Subway's like huge out here.
Popular.
But that was like the only like maybe fast food that town had. You know, there wasn't like a McDonald's on every corner, or a Starbucks even. Like if we wanted coffee, it was like you go in the local gas station in the little tiny mini mart they have, and you know, it's coffee that the guy made for you, and you're just like, I'll take it. Well, you know, can buy your deer meat as well as, you know, maybe some fruit or something, you know, at the local store. It was such a different world for us, but we just like fell in love with it. We just enjoyed our time there, and we were there for I think 10 or 11 days on the one trip. And so it was just kind of like, and that's what we did. We just like ventured out and just hung out. We had a hotel room that we would come back to every night, but we ate in a different restaurant every day, little places, holes in the wall, just, you know, just to get the experience and just be around, like, you know, what would it really be like to live there? And if we had moved there, like what, you know, what would life be like for us? And it was those small towns, you know, those few shops on Main Street. And if you blinked, you missed everything in the town except for the, you know, the scattered out ranches. I mean, we drove for miles and there was nothing but like a ranch here. And then maybe the next house was, you know, 10 miles down the road.
Wow.
And it was like, you know, that would be quite a life. You know, you think about like, you know, how do they go grocery shopping? Like,
that's exactly what I was just thinking. How do I get my Chinese food?
Yeah, where is the nearest Walmart around here? Like, even because I mean, even that was like nowhere to be found. So it was all these little shops, and it was interesting too that we really loved that a lot of the shops like really catered, you know, to that small town community where you could buy a little of everything in one little shop. You know, they had to keep, you know, so much in one store to offer to their, you know, clientele, because, you know, it was so far to get to like a big store. Which we loved. We were just like, this is really quaint. I bet, you know, and me, the writer, I'm like, I bet this person knows like everybody who comes in here and what they like and what they want, and like how they would cater to their customers in that kind of more personal way, because they know who you are. I mean, I've been going to my local Safeway forever. I don't think anybody knows my name.
Exactly. It's like even at Starbucks where they go all the time and they have my name, they don't know my name.
I know. Exactly. Yeah.
So after I mean, obviously, besides the fact that, you know, he works in California, but did you guys think that maybe you could make it in as a Montana life at all?
Oh yeah, my husband's a huge outdoors guy. I mean, he's ex-military. He grew up in all kind of moving all over the place with his mom. He's lived up in Oregon and all over California. We lived in Georgia for a while when he was stationed out there. And our family is just a lot of outdoors. We go camping, we go, you know, boating on the lake, you know, it's just outdoors all the time. And he's a huge mountain biker now, so he's up in the hills all the time.
That's cool.
So yeah, so we were definitely like, you know, I mean, it was so easy to envision that life, even though we live in a city right now. But for us in California, I think that's why we're so spoiled, is because you can, an hour away, you can have anything you want. I mean, so yeah, so in fact, it was our anniversary not that long ago, and I was just like, you know what? We've been to the mountains many, many times. We go hiking in the hills often. I'm like, let's go to the beach this time. You know, in an hour we were at the beach, and so it's like, let's just hang out at the beach for a while and do some hiking out there. It was much cooler. The air was much cleaner out on the coast. So, but that's, you know, I think that's really the kind of the luxury we have here living in California, is that everything is available to you and you can do all of it. But Montana was just like, there just wasn't, I don't even know how to explain the kind of peacefulness it had to it, as well as a quietness when you're out there. And it was like, you know, it was just the two of us out hiking, and we had all of Lake Como to ourselves. There was nobody there, and we hiked the whole thing miles and never saw a person. We heard a lot of gunshots going off with the hunting. But we never saw anybody. So it was like, it was so peaceful and quiet, and you could really like take your time to just like be outside and think, and like, or just be quiet with yourself. It was really quite, you know, we just loved it so much. We can't wait to go back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I love when main characters are too stubborn to get out of their own way. And I found with your main characters for True Love Cowboy, John and Trinity, that they were exactly that way. Neither of them have time for love, but you can't really help who you fall in love with. Can you talk a little bit about putting those two together and what their story brings to the series?
I love John and Trinity putting them together, because Trinity has 2 or 3 older brothers in the other books. And so I just was just like, she needs somebody to just kind of come into her life and be like, I want you. And this is what it is. And just be like upfront with her. She'd also been in the previous book. She'd also gone through a traumatic experience. And so she needed somebody who could kind of recognize that in her and be a little bit, patient, but also like not so patient that she didn't realize that he wanted to be with her. And so I think John was like the perfect fit for her. And John is a guy who, you know, has been living the dream in California, building his business, and he is looking for exactly what I described, a quieter life, something a little more simple, and a woman who at the very heart of everything is kind. And he's kind of, you know, that's where he's at. And he doesn't know that's what he's looking for until he meets her. So they were a lot of fun to put together. And then for John, John's got like a lot going on with his ex. And that story, that whole storyline, believe it or not, I don't often write like true events, but that is actually
really
completely taken from a couple that I know. And that has been their experience, where he actually had to get custody of his daughter away from his mother. And I thought it was like like watching them go through it, I was like, this is a really interesting dynamic. I mean, the story that's in the book is not exactly the same as the story of the couple I know. I expanded it a little bit, and I made Stephanie a little bit more bad than my friend is. But but the concept, the reason that I wrote it was because I was so taken with how difficult it was for a father to try and get his child. And that it wasn't just a done deal, because obviously Emmy needed to be taken away from her mother for her own safety. But watching it in real life play out and how difficult it was really kind of stunned me. And I was like, I was like, that would be hard as a dad or as a parent, whichever side you're on of it, to want so badly to protect your child and not be able to in the way that you want to just, snatch the child away and hold them close and make sure that they feel loved and safe. And to not be able to do that. So I thought that was a really interesting dynamic to watch John go through, and to have Trinity support him and be kind of the fairy godmother that Emmy really needed.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's, something that we talk about constantly with book club, is that what romance novels do so well is that they have this conversation, fiction in general, but just has this conversation of that are real issues and makes it personal, makes it relatable, because you're putting it into these characters that we get to spend time with, that we get to befriend and become in love with. And I love that, because then you get to have these big conversations, especially like talking about how hard it is for a dad to get custody of his children when it's the right situation. And so I think that that's like a great opportunity that you had in the book.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the situation was so clear. It was so clear with the people that I know that this is what needed to happen, but the system is not set up to make it happen that way in some cases. And so I just thought it was really interesting. And I wanted to show that it, for John, I think a lot of times we, in books and things, you see the mothers. And so I wanted to put it on the other side. Like, what would a dad be going through who really loves his child, is trying to do the best that he can for her, but gets kind of hindered in his ability to do that. And so I thought that would be really good to see on the page. And also, I wanted to see how Trinity would look at him and be like, that's a guy worth having. A guy who cares that much about family and doing the right thing. He gave up his whole life, his whole other life, to do right by this little girl that he loves so much. And so I think it would be hard for anybody to be like, that's not a good guy.
Right, exactly. Now seems too good.
A little too good to be true, Well, and I think that's, I think that men who are like that maybe don't get portrayed enough. It's hard to do that sometimes, because you're just like, well, obviously she's going to fall in love with him. But there was a lot that had to happen for for Trinity and John to be together, to have it work out. Because there was so much going on between them and outside of them. And sometimes it's those outside things that make it hard, that you're like, I don't know if I want to step into that situation, but to have the heart to do that too on Trinity's part, I think was really beautiful and sweet.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking of like her strength and like how you especially to step into that so early in a relationship, like you have to take a leap of faith.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted Trinity to do, because she was so kind of mired in her like PTSD and this traumatic event that happened to her. I wanted to give her something to make her step outside of that. And a lot of times, people talk about, oh, when you do something for somebody else, it makes you feel better. And I kind of wanted that for Trinity. I wanted her to be able to do something for somebody, to see that she was actually okay. She was a whole person again. She could be, for somebody else, the strength that she thought she didn't have, but she really did have it. And she was able to give that back to Emmy. So
awesome. Great. Well, before we open up the floor to our reader questions, I just have a couple more questions for you. What else? You mentioned that you've got a new series that's going to be taking place in Wyoming, making a little switch over. What can readers expect next when you can give us a little sneak peek into that?
Okay, so the next book is going to be a fan favorite. So Chase Wilde, everybody met in Drake's book, Tough Talking Cowboy, Drake McGrath's book. And so everybody met him. He was in rehab with Juliana, who's in that book as well. And so we're all going to get to see what happens to Chase when he leaves rehab and rejoins his life and his family. And although in Tough Talking Cowboy, I introduce Chase, I don't introduce any of his story. And so he has a lot going on that I think people are going to be surprised by. And how his story kind of unfolds, and also who he is in love with. And she has a past that is, in pure Jennifer Ryan fashion, a disaster. A disaster waiting to happen that Chase will have to help her get through. But also there's a big like surprise in the book that I can't wait for fans to read and like hear their reaction about. So I'm kind of excited about this book coming out. It comes out in March 29th, I think it is, of next year. Yeah, so because of this like surprise that even my editor was like, I did not see that coming. I was like, yes.
What a compliment.
I know. When you can trick your editor, that's pretty good. A lot. And so, yeah, we even had a couple other people read it and they were just like, I thought maybe, but then no, but then yeah. I was like, okay, I'll take it.
That's so cool.
So I'm really looking forward to that book coming out in March. And then I just finished writing my women's fiction book for next summer called The One You Want. And I'm a little bit giddy about it too, because the love story in that book is, it was really fun to write because it's a little lighter than what I normally write or what I have been writing. Right. And it was kind of fun. So the premise of the book is 1 week, 2 friends, secrets revealed, and a wedding gone wrong. So that kind of sets it up for you.
I love all those points.
And it's set in Carmel, which is beautiful. So, you know.
Another fun place to do a research trip too, I think.
Yes, been down there many times. I love it down there. Like I said, you know, the nice thing about living out here, you can go to some beautiful places, and it's, you know, Carmel, I think, is like about 2 hours away from me. So the book is kind of set with these Silicon Valley people who go to Carmel for this wedding. And the main character, Rose, is going for her best friend Maggie's wedding and reconnecting with her family, who she's been estranged from for the last 8 years. So it'll be a fun summer read.
Yeah, for sure. Well, do you approach your women fiction differently than it's just your cowboy and contemporary romances?
I do. The women's fiction are, you know, there's always some sort of suspense, but it's never like, you know, the dire straits that I put all my cowboy guys through and their ladies. But that, and it's also centered around the family dynamic. And usually it's, you know, reconciling with family in some way, bridging, you know, the gap, secrets that maybe have, you know, are the other family members don't know about or that have happened. And in this case, the mother and sister are left at home. Rose leaves to go to college and never returns because she grew up in an abusive household with an abusive alcoholic, but her father is dead now. And this is the first time she's going home since his death. And her sister blames her for leaving her behind in this house. And her mother is, you know, upset and sad that she couldn't stop the abuse and feeling all that guilt. And so her mother and sister are basically stuck in this nightmare that Rose has escaped and found a new life. And her mother is happy and doesn't want her to be home. She wants her to stay as far away from the past as she can. And so there's this like weird family dynamic. And that's what I love about doing the women's fiction. I also write it from multiple points of view. So you get Rose's point of view, you get Poppy, her sister's point of view, and then her best friend Maggie, who's getting married, and things are not turning out the way that she hoped. And so it's like, you know, I love like looking at, you know, just when I write the women's fiction, it's mostly through the women's eyes and like what's happening in their lives. Where are they now? Where do they want to be? What has happened that they've overcome? And how have they become the women that they are? And so that's always a lot of fun to kind of delve into. Although I love writing my guys. They're, you know, they're really good. And I gave Rose a really great guy and this guy named Gray. And yeah, I'm a little in love with him.
Oh man, that's the best. It's like, I always love it too when the author is in love with the character, because then you can, like, when you read it, you really feel that.
Yeah, and after writing Chase's book, because he was a little bit that book was a little bit hard to write. It was during the pandemic, you know, your mind is just not in a great space a lot of times, and he was in a dark place as it was. He's ex-military, he's got PTSD, he had drug addiction, he's been in rehab, and I was like, oh my God, Chase, you're killing me.
Really done it.
But getting him there was a long haul through the pandemic, so writing this story was it's a little lighter. And there is some, you know, turmoil that goes on in the book. But in the end, you know, I just knew that they were going to be happy, like so happy together, that I was like, I can't stand it.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me so happy. All right. Well, Jen, like I said, before we turn over to our readers, how can readers stay in touch with you and find out more about you?
I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Everybody can find me under Jennifer Ryan Author. I also have a website. You can join my newsletter. I send out newsletters only to let people know when I have a book coming out, if there's a book on sale. So I don't bombard anybody with like a ton of emails or anything. And that's a great way to keep in touch, as well as know, you know, if a book's coming on sale and you're looking for it. And then, yeah, if you read a book and you loved it and you just can't stand it and you have to talk to me, I answer my Facebook all the time, so happy to chat. I'm always there.
And in March, everyone will be bombarding your inbox with their opinions on The Big Surprise.
I hope so. I would love to hear what people think. I can't wait.
Jen, thank you so much. This was so wonderful getting to chat with you. I always have such I'm just getting like the ultimate extrovert burst just getting to chat with you today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. I always have fun with you too.